All right, man. Big stuff happening at 147 pounds. Terence Crawford is targeted, if not called out, by Virgil Ortiz, who says that he wants him after, or sees a fight happen with him after the Maurice Hooker fight. And what I think also is definitely after a Jarron Ennis fight. But this conversation 100% is important because there's going to be a shift in the 147-pound division and 154-pound division. And Virgil Ortiz most likely is going to be centered to that. And I could see a fight with him being a lucrative fight between him and Terence Crawford. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So this is going to be about the 147-pound division. We have champions that are really, really on top of it, right? A very deep division where you know who the top guys are, and the top guys in that division are some of the top guys in the sport of boxing. Those guys obviously are, the number one guy in the division, in my opinion, is Errol Spence Jr., followed by Terence Crawford. Then you got the WBA champion, Yordenis Ugas. You got Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, I would say, but he said he's moving up to 154. Other guys, like very established guys at 100. Manny Pacquiao was somebody we would mention in that regard too, but a very, very stacked division. But it's also one that has an up-and-coming group of fighters that two of which I think are the cream of the crop. One I think could be the best fighter in all of boxing. And the other guy is somebody that we're going to talk about for the majority of this video, is somebody that can cause havoc, I do believe, with the top guys at welterweight right now. If not, I believe that he can beat some, but give him a year and a half, 2 years, and he's going to be one of the top guys, and that is Virgil Ortiz. Now, Virgil Ortiz is going to be having a step-up fight. My understanding is that he has a step-up fight, and that is going to be against Maurice Hooker. Now, Maurice Hooker is a former 140-pound champion, is now fighting and campaigning at 147 pounds, that is also trained by Bomac, who's the trainer of and the series of coaches that are around with Team Crawford. Because Team Crawford, I think, maybe has 3 separate coaches. Bomac, I do believe the other man's name is Red, and I can't remember the other Latino or Hispanic man that's in that corner. But, excellent team. So what Virgil Ortiz is believing is that because he's pressing for Terence Crawford, that they're going to be watching and really trying to test him in this fight to see how a potential matchup would happen between the two of them. Now, but I want to be clear before I get into specifically about the Virgil Ortiz Terence Crawford fight, that I don't believe that that Virgil Ortiz is the best up and coming guy at 147. I've done several videos, and I will continue to do videos about Jarron Ennis and how I think that Jarron Ennis really should be poised to get a shot at a championship sooner than Virgil Ortiz is. I do believe that the fight that he has coming up is going to be against Sergey Lipinets. If that opponent is changed, that's something, that may have happened since I, last looked into that particular circumstance. However, my understanding is that Virgil Ortiz, that it's Jarron Ennis that's fighting Lipinets, and that is going to be really the stepping stone for him then to get a major fight against maybe a Yordenis Ugas or somebody like that for a championship. But with Jarron Ennis to the side, Virgil Ortiz saying that he's looking for Terence Crawford, it's easy a lot of times just to look and just immediately say, nah, Terence Crawford is going to beat Virgil Ortiz, right? That would be like the first thought that came to my mind is, and I know when I do this video that I'm going to hear a lot of people saying that, oh, he's not ready, he's not, it's just going to be a massacre and all that. Well, to my standpoint on that is that Virgil Ortiz has already proven that he is one of the best guys at 147 pounds, at least from what I can see. Now, if he gets past Maurice Hooker, who's a 140-pound champion, he gets through that in serious fashion, then I think that we should be able to realize that his potential is now, being realized. And there are some things and advantages that Virgil Ortiz has over Terence Crawford that are they're legitimate advantages, right? For example, he's a much bigger guy. Virgil Ortiz, I do believe, was at he may have been at 140 for a second, but jumped right up to 147. I think he's probably going to be at 154 pounds, maybe wind up being in his career at 160 pounds. And so Virgil Ortiz is a very, very big guy. He's a very, very strong guy. If you've not looked, if you go to the on this, plug for the Instagram, go to the Instagram channel and look at some of the highlights or the things that we've done on Virgil Ortiz. I think I've also have one up on Virgil Ortiz on the YouTube channel as well. And you can see that he's just a very, very technically sound fighter coming out of Texas. And that style that I think, when people ask me about Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr., my thought is that, that's a style problem for Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, somebody that is very, very athletic, somebody that can stay on the outside, they can mix it up, get in and get out, really can, get you with his feints, just super, super talented guy that, really dictates the ring generalship, really dictates what's going on, dictates, with his switches from southpaw to orthodox, right? Really controls the pace of the fight. That's something that I think that, that is what Terence Crawford does. But a style issue with him is that somebody like an Errol Spence Jr., I believe, is not really going to be giving him, a lot of, time to do that, right? There's not going to be a lot of feints. There's not going to be a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of pressure there. Now, and the reason that is, I believe, is that style is a bit of a hybrid because they're from Texas and they have an excellent, trainer in Derrick James, but they were also trained to fight in Mexican gyms. And if you look at the way Errol Spence Jr. fights, he chops you down like a tree, right? So any amount of time that you're spending, posing or feigning or trying to do it, he's really putting that pressure on you. And you can see that those type of matchups are traditionally what cause slicker fighters problems. And I would say that although I wouldn't call, Terence Crawford somebody that is just, just a one-dimensional fighter from the outside, he'll also slug. I just say that is, that is going to be a style consideration for him, especially when you then consider, the size that we said, that where Terence Crawford started at 135 and he got to 147, he may go to 154, but Virgil Ortiz was at 140 for a hot second. At 147, definitely headed to 154. So, and then the age, time, all that. And I don't think that, definitely have not seen Terence Crawford and be interested in how Terence Crawford would react to a young fighter like that. However, I would believe that Terence Crawford would take the same viewpoint that Sean Porter took on Jarron Ennis when he was asked about that on the Porterweight podcast, where he's like, look, I'm not going to be fighting this, now that's going to be these young guys. That's going to be for some of those other young guys to, to hash through that. That very well may be the same sentiment that Terence Crawford would have. But seeing as Terence Crawford, there's options there for him. But, this may be an option that he decides to take, an up-and-coming young fighter, opportunity from Dallas, Texas. So if it was a situation where, he was really looking for the Errol Spence Jr. fight, he could have a fight in Texas with Virgil Ortiz, independent of Errol Spence Jr., might do very, very well at the AT&T Stadium and then set himself up for that Errol Spence match, which could come after, provided that Errol Spence Jr. and your Denis Ugas get it on. But, all in all, man, at 140, the young guys coming in at 147, I think that they are going to be pushing in the next year, 2 years, really to be at the top of that. I think Jarron Ennis is really the guy, but Virgil Ortiz, hey, man, a terrific fighter as well. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think, and with that, I'm out. Peace.